Well, you might not be able to believe it or see it, but behind the scenes, we may well be reaching some sort of bipartisan, let's not call it agreement, but meeting of minds in Washington. We'll have more on that for you in the News Hub. Coming up, welcome. This is a packed show. We also have some details on fast tracking of military equipment in Afghanistan, how that's going to continue as after the troops withdraw from there, and all sorts of details for developing in markets today. So we have a packed show. Thanks for joining us. Patrick O'Connor in Washington is going to join us first. You know, Patrick, it seems that, at least in our reporting, and I think it's a nice solid story we have here, that albeit in an absence of public statements, there is a little bit more of a progress towards an agreement on the fiscal cliff negotiations in Washington. Tell us about what's going on there.
Well, so it seems. Negotiations in Washington have a tendency to be most productive when the two sides aren't trading barbs in press conferences. We've had a couple weeks where the House Speaker and the White House have been going back and forth at each other in the press. It typically does not augur well for productive talks behind the scenes. It seems like things have, the Speaker went to the White House on Sunday, and ever since it seems that things have finally started to pick up into another gear. And I guess the sure sign of that is the fact that neither side will tell us what they're talking about. They definitely have a lot of things that they will disagree on, first and foremost, raising tax rates. But I think at this point, they want to try and accomplish as much as they can and kind of get some of the things that they can agree to off the table so that they can kind of get to the things that they don't.
So we in the public and in the press here are stuck in a little bit of a paradox, right? I mean, we understand that there's progress, but we don't know about what. Can we kind of guess at least where there may be some compromises being made on either side on these key issues of tax hikes and spending cuts?
It's pretty tough to guess, but you know, we kind of know the contours of what a deal is going to have to look like. The president's going to have to give a little bit on the entitlement side. Now, what he decides to offer up remains a fairly open question. It even is a little bit of an open question what Republicans want from him. They want some sort of structural changes to Medicare, maybe even to Social Security. The president obviously has drawn a very hard line on tax rates. Republicans won't bend. They don't want the tax rates on the top 2% to go up. The president says they have to. I think that probably is a question that will be resolved toward the end. But in the interim, as they try and get to a number, I mean, essentially what we're trying to come to is an agreement about what the deficit reduction target is going to be. A lot of people have said somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 trillion. The tax rates, that's going to be roughly $1 trillion or more. The president's asked for $1.6 trillion in new revenue, and on the entitlement side, maybe another $1 or $2 trillion. So presumably, there's another $1 trillion or so cuts in there that they're going to try to agree to, in addition to what they have already come to agree to. So, right. Presumably, there is some room for them to come to some sort of compromise on the things that are less controversial. But I think these controversial subjects are probably going to get pushed into the next week.
But they have to do this pretty quickly, right? Congress is supposed to go to recess on December 21st.
They've got until early January to decide most of these issues. I think most folks assume that they would get this thing done before members leave for Christmas, a week from this coming Friday. That is looking less and less likely as we get closer to that deadline.
So you actually, Patrick, you had a fascinating story today on John Boehner and his role as Speaker of the House. The bind, really, I mean, he seems to have taken a very different tack than he did last time during the deficit negotiations in 2010. But he really has a difficult job trying to, on the one hand, keep his party together with all these mavericks amongst the Tea Party, the class of 2010, as you call them, and at the same time, really get a deal over the line. Talk a little bit about that balancing act and how he is performing in that.
Yeah, he's got a really hard job. I mean, the thing that we're paying attention to are these negotiations with the president and the détente between the two men. But you got to keep in mind that at the end of the day, John Boehner is going to have to get 218 votes to pass this bill in the House, and presumably he's going to have to do it with at least half of his members. There has been some talk that if the deal is really good for Democrats, that Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader in the House, would be able to muster plenty of votes to get something through with, a couple dozen Republicans. But that would really be a killer for John Boehner. It would tarnish his legacy and make it difficult for him to do anything moving forward. So, as most of your viewers recall, the Speaker tried to cut a so-called grand bargain with the President last summer. but really had the rug pulled out from underneath him in part by his own members. He had a hard time corralling this new class of freshmen that came in with the Tea Party, and I think he spent a lot of time over the last year trying to kind of bring them into the fold. Now, these guys may not sign off on an eventual deal, they may not vote for it, but to this point, they've kind of kept their powder dry. They haven't been complaining about the speaker and the public. They haven't been trying to kind of box him in terms of what a final deal will look like. Yeah. So he has really done everything he could to try and kind of bring them into the fold and onto the team.
All right, Patrick, thanks very much for your time. Fascinating stuff. You know what, if you really want to participate in these historic, if you like, fiscal cliff debates, you feel like you've got the answer, well, here's your chance. Our crack economics team have put together their own Make Your Own Deficit Reduction Plan project online. You can find it on WSJ.com. Go there, pick what you think are the entitlement cuts that need to be there, what tax hikes might need to come through, and see if you can come up with the perfect solution.